to Justice Quest.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. This is your host, Tom O'Neill, and I'm welcome to Justice Quest. And you can hit our website at justicequestlive.com and follow and share and donate as you see fit. All right. Today's scripture reading, we're going to go ahead and get that out of the way. And I don't mean that in a light sense way, but we always start out with our scripture reading first. It's posted right here on the board. It's taken from Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 38. I will purge the rebels from among you and bring those who transgress against me. I will bring them out of the country where they sojourn, but they shall not enter the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Yeah. You know, this is a show, and I'm getting tired of being polite. I'm tired of being reasonable, and I'm tired of talking about it. It's time. We're past that. It's time for action. And we're going to go ahead and speak the truth. No matter who hates me, who unfriends me, who blocks me, who mocks me, I am here to awaken lions, not amuse sheep. And I don't know about you, but I was a sheep farmer. You know, all you got to do is wave your hand and they scatter. You know, they're one of my favorite lines in movies, and I love movies, is when Rambo is being infiltrated into Afghanistan, and his guide is telling him a story. And the story is that, you know, the king went ahead and wanted to invade another country or whatever. And he said he sent in 5 lions, you know, instead of 5,000 sheep, you know. And he said, "Don't you think that's that's important?" And Rambo just kind of looks at him and says, "Well, I think the king got lucky." No, I said no. I mean, there's an account in the Bible where a man slew 10,000 with a jawbone of an ass. You know, one man, highly motivated, can go ahead and do more than a standing army. You know, and that's what here. And we're just saying, I am not going to go ahead. My brain's going like 15 different directions, so bear with me. We've gone ahead and long maintained on this show that we're not declaring war on the government, but the government has declared war on we, the people of the United States. We can see that with Ruby Ridge. We see that with their policies. Yeah, we've demonstrated that with policy rigging against big business. Pharmaceuticals, they're just cha-ching, 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 using the American taxpayer as a ATM machine. Big banks fail, they get a taxpayer bailout. Yeah, well, let them fail, you know. But this is it, and they've coined the term "too big to fail." You know, big banks are also laundering money for the drug cartels. We've also demonstrated that on this program. You know, Muslims are here to invade. You know, I posted a thing on Facebook this weekend, and somebody wrote back to me and says, "Listen up, they've got the freedom of religion, you tard." You know, I'm assuming he means retard, you know, but I said, yeah, but this is an invasion. This is not freedom of religion. We're letting the Hindus in here. We're letting other religions in here, and we're letting them in here peacefully to go ahead and worship as they choose, but they're not here to take over. The Muslims are. That is the difference. Islam is a political extension of Muslim. You know, if you're, how can I say that? Whether we're Republicans or Democrats, we fall under the jurisdiction of the United States Constitution. All right, or at least we're supposed to. And I've demonstrated how that's being ignored on a daily basis. If you're Muslim, you reside under the jurisdiction of Islam, which is the legal framework. All right. And that brings me up to another point, and we're going to go ahead and get on to our main point. But the fact of the matter is that they are invading the world. They're in there for a one world caliphate, and if you're thinking that you're being tolerant, inclusive, and open-minded, you're actually being conquered. People who listen to Rush Limbaugh were called mind-numbed robots, and Rush Limbaugh said, "You're the mind-numbed robots. You don't know how to think for yourself." And this is true. All right. And in other news, we had a shooting incident in Dearborn, Michigan, and I want to go ahead and analyze that for a moment. And I've got it here. 2 plainclothes Dearborn police officers were shot early Friday morning, and I'm just going to go ahead and do this, and we're going to move on to the Banana Republics and how they got their name and all the political intrigue behind bananas. Believe it or not, I kind of run across this by accident. But anyway, let's get back to the Dearborn. 2 plainclothes Dearborn police officers were shot early Friday morning during an attempted arrest, and the suspect is in custody in critical condition. The suspect, a 32-year-old Detroit man, was also shot and remains hospitalized in critical condition. It's my opinion or my thoughts that he's a Muslim, because if he was a Christian conservative, he'd have been on national news right now. But since they are withholding that critical piece of information, I would suspect, mind you, that he's a Muslim. All right. So it had begun. They don't say anything about it. After the shooting, the suspect fled again, at one point throwing 2 handguns from the tow truck window. He was eventually forced to pull over in the 2700 block of Stanford in Inkster, where officers found him wounded and took him into custody. Chief Shaheen, the Muslim chief of police, called it a small miracle that the officers survived, noting the encounter could easily have been fatal. Not one mention about his background. Not one mention about his background. And I kind of find that highly suspicious. But today we're going to go ahead and move on to a new subject. And we're going to talk about the United Fruit Company, how they went ahead and, boy, this gets complicated. But we as Americans, and I'm not saying as Americans, we kind of embrace the live and let live policy, and we react to what the government is telling us. I've got I wouldn't say a friend of mine, but an acquaintance of mine who donates large sums of money to Ukrainian resistance to the Russian invasion. And I'm saying that, why are you doing that? Because we don't know actually what's going on there or what causes. All we know is what they're telling us. They're half a world away, and it could be anything. All right, but this is how it works, and this goes back to the 1800s. But we're going to start out there, and bear with me. I'm going somewhere with this. The United Fruit Company was a large multinational American corporation that played a large role in the development of Latin America, particularly Central American nations such as Honduras, Guatemala, and Costa Rica throughout the 20th century. Now, I don't remember how I came across this, but it wasn't but a couple of days ago. Many Central American countries were ruled by dictators in the early 20th century that enacted favorable policy towards the United States in the hopes of economic investment and development. All right, that makes sense. Large corporations such as the United Fruit Company seized the initiative and used these policies to their advantage. The power and influence gained by the United Fruit Company, who later became Chiquita, would lead to economic exploitation of the countries, particularly Guatemala. Hence the term Banana Republic. And the Banana Republic has been in the military lexicon. And for those of you who have the IQ of a turnip, all right, lexicon means the military language, all right, a part of it. Just like when we invaded Grenada, you know, it says we're going to war with another in favor of a Banana Republic. I go, yeah, I guess we are. But actually, that was a pretty good move. But anyway, the United Fruit Company was formed in 1899. All right, yeah, and I've got 14 pages and 19 pages in the second issue, but we're going to be covering the highlights. Through various buyouts and favorable treatment, the United Fruit Company was the largest employer in Central America by 1930. In some countries, they were even the largest landholder. All right. The United Fruit Company was asked to manage Guatemala's postal service in 1901, while also securing the rights to build and manage a railroad in 1904 under the dictator Jorge Ubico in the 1930s. Now, Central America was run mostly by dictators back then. The United Fruit Company gained control of over 42% of lands in Guatemala. It was also exempt from paying taxes and import duties. Does that sound familiar? Isn't that what we're going on with our own companies today? Yet, the American people are forced to pay taxes. And recently there's been a court decision that, no, paying taxes is voluntary. All right, but once you sign that 1041A, you are obligated to pay what you owe. Your reporting is mandatory. Paying is optional, supposedly. I've got to look more into that, but don't take my word for it. But check it out for yourself. Let's see. In one case, UFC. Okay. Yeah, they bought up 42% of the land, all right, and they held on to a sizable portion of it, not using it for anything, all right. And independent farmers wanted to go ahead and start banana farming on their own, but United Fruit Company went ahead and said, we're not letting that happen. In one case, the UFC even completely destroyed a rail line in an area once they no longer had use for it, to ensure nobody else would profit off their work. The company also lobbied against building of other public transportation networks in the country to increase the reliance on their managed rail services. Yeah. The Guatemalan Revolution in 1944 would oust the dictator Jorge Ubico and lead to the first democratically elected president in the country's history, Juan Arevalo. The changes in store would not be favorable to the United Fruit Company. Okay, now, this is where it gets tricky. Pay attention and follow me on this. Let's see. With the Arevalo presidency came many changes in Guatemala, all right? They instituted a new labor code that improved workers' rights, giving them the ability to organize and strike to improve their working conditions. Land reform was a priority as well, with Arbenz particularly seeking changes. Only 2% of the population owns 72% of the arable land in Guatemala, and only 12% of the private land was being utilized. With a large population of landless, poor, working class, Arbenz passed Decree 900, which sought to redistribute these lands. The United Fruit Company was a target throughout these reforms. The UFC owned 42% of Guatemalan land, yet only utilized 15% of its land. It was these huge tracts of unused land that Arbenz targeted to redistribute to the landless poor. Now, that sounds like he was doing a pretty good job. Kind of what Trump is doing in this country, only on different fronts, okay? With the new Democratic government challenging its power, the United Fruit Company looked to the U.S. government for support. Luckily, for the company, the Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, law firm, represented UFC. Brothers Allen Dulles was the director of the CIA, owned share, and sat on its board of trustees. With the help of the CIA, the United Fruit Company began a campaign in the United States helping to shape public opinion and policy. His administration is succumbing to communist influences. Yeah, you know what? This is what I'm saying is they tell us only what they want us to know. All right, they don't tell us about the background. And this is what I'm saying about the press needs to do their job. All right, these stories were probably run in the press. All right. Did the press send anybody down there to investigate all this? No. Well, that's what I'm saying. We ought to go ahead and issue press passes to any journalist. You know, if you don't tell the whole story, you're no longer a journalist. If you tell one lie, boom, it's like misusing a gun. You go to jail. You know, hey, that's what they want on us gun owners. Why not? And that's a constitutionally protected freedom, as is freedom of the press. So let's go ahead and apply the same restrictions on the press as we have on handguns or firearms in general. Let's see. The CIA was given authorization to conduct a covert operation to remove our Benz from power. Codenamed Operation PB Success. All right. U.S.-backed rebels quickly overthrew the army and U.S. government. And we have not learned our lesson since. Okay, well, I've got more on this in another article, and I'm going to go through that. Throughout all this, the UFC regained its former lands and privileges, though it did not profit off the coup. In fact, the coup proved disastrous for the company, as the corrupt regime proved to be a massive destabilizing force in the region that impeded business. The UFC would eventually merge with another company to stave off bankruptcy. Yeah. And it goes on and on. And that... the UFC finally ended up becoming Chiquita Bananas. And hence, that's where we get the term Banana Republic from, because it just didn't happen in Guatemala. It happened in Central American nations such as Honduras, Guatemala, Costa Rica throughout the 20th century. They even got into Cuba prior to Fidel Castro. But anyway, let's see. Got another one, and this is from Wikipedia. Let's see. And I went ahead and underlined some. And this goes into Costa Rica. At its founding, United Fruit was capitalized at $11.23 million. Okay, that was back in 1899. Let's see. By 1930, it absorbed more than 20 rival firms, acquiring a capital of $215 million. Boy, in 30 years, and becoming the largest employer in Central America. Let's see. Costa Rican peasants involved more than 30 separate unions and 100,000 workers in the 1934 banana strike. Well, United Fruit Company became, let's see. Yeah. And in 1967, the United Fruit Company acquired A&W Restaurants. Have you ever looked at the back of packaging and found out where who owns the food you're buying? You know, I started reading the back of the burger wrapper in Burger King, and believe it or not, Burger King at one time was owned by Purina Foods. I don't know, but anyway, enough of that. Let's see. It used to be my favorite fast food restaurant. Well, second favorite anyway. Okay, let's see. Getting back to Secretary of State John Foster Dulles and his law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell negotiated land giveaways to the United Fruit Company in Guatemala and Honduras. John Foster Dulles' brother Alan Dulles, who was head of the CIA under Eisenhower, also did legal work for United Fruit. The Dulles brothers and Sullivan and Cromwell were on the United Fruit payroll for 38 years. You know what? Isn't that what we call influence peddling, or at least a conflict of interest here? You know, and I am sure that they went ahead and presented only what they wanted the president to know at that time. Yeah, and they're good at doing that too. We'll tell them only what they need to know, or what we want them to know. Yeah. Oh, we've got a communist guy and president down in Guatemala. Never mind that we hold a controlling interest in the United Fruit Company. Yeah. One of the company's primary, this is getting back to United Fruit Company. One of the company's primary tactics for maintaining market dominance was to control the distribution of arable land. UFCO claimed that hurricane blight and other natural threats required them to hold extra land or reserve land. In practice, what this meant was that UFCO was able to prevent the government from distributing land to peasants who wanted a share of the banana trade. Yeah. We just want to go and be farmers, Yeah. The fact that UFCO relied so heavily on manipulating land use rights to maintain their market dominance had a number of long-term consequences for the region. Yeah, we're getting back to here. The term Banana Republic was coined by American writer O. Henry. Okay, you can look that up. There was the United Fruit Company's entire process of creating a plantation of farmed bananas and the effects of these practices created noticeable environmental degradation when it was a thriving company. Infrastructure built by the company was constructed by clearing out forests, filling in low swampy areas, installing sewage, drainage, and water systems. Ecosystems that relied on these lands were destroyed, devastating biodiversity. With a loss of biodiversity, other natural processes within nature necessary for plant and animal survival are shut down. Yeah. Then they introduced bass, all right? Guatemala, all right, although UFCO promoted the development of nations where it operated, its long-term effects on their economy and infrastructure are often devastating. If a company has got a good thing going, why would we want to go and we see something's not working? Why wouldn't you go ahead and stop it? It's like these flock cameras going up. They're being destroyed. They're being pulled down. In one case, in a county commissioner's meeting, a bunch of guys got together and started following and filming the county commissioners. And they said, how do you like it? You don't? Well, guess what? We don't either. And that's what I suggest. Pull down the flock cameras, shoot them, incinerate them, do whatever you have to do to them, but destroy them. Tell them, no, we're not taking part of this. And they say, oh, it's for solving crimes. Well, I'm getting reports from Denver that the drug cartels are driving in blacked out vans. Well, if we have flock cameras everywhere, if we see a van without a license plate, wouldn't that be a reason to stop it? But no, you're not going to stop it because those drug dealers are dangerous people. They're armed. And there we go. Why does the United States government want the population disarmed so they can have their way with them? Of all the gun bills being presented in front of state and federal law legislatures, all of them deal with taking away guns from the law-abiding citizen. Anybody who sponsors these bills or votes for them or is in favor of them, I've got the solution right here. We string them up as being traitors to the Constitution, as being traitors to their fellow citizens. But getting back to the banana republics, let's see. And I would think that, after all this time, we would learn to keep our nose out of other people's business. You decided to do business in that country, that's your problem. All right, we're not going to go ahead and overthrow a dictator just on your say-so, or a president just on your say-so. A strike, yeah. This even caused bloodshed. A strike by United Fruit Workers broke out on 12 November 1928 near Santa Marta on the Caribbean coast of Colombia. On December 6, Colombian army troops allegedly under the command of General Cortez Vargas, allegedly? All right. I'll get back to that in a second. That's good. Opened fire on a crowd of strikers in the central square of Cienega. Estimates of the number of casualties vary from 47 to 3,000. Regardless, blood was spilled. Casualties, even one over bananas. I've read of two countries going to war over an island in the Pacific, right off the west coast of South America, over bird guano. It was such a rich fertilizer that they went to war over it, Hence the term bat crap crazy, I guess. The military justified this action, stating that the strike was subversive and its organizers were communist revolutionaries. Yeah. And then it goes on. General Cortez Vargas issued the order to shoot, arguing later he had done so because of information U.S. boats were poised to land troops on Colombian coast to defend American personnel in the interest of the United Fruit Company. Vargas issued the order so the United States could not invade. But remember, we just read, allegedly under the command of General Cortez Vargas, opened fire on a crowd of strikers. Yet they're conflicting one another. People, we've got to go ahead and get our own house in order before we go ahead and start sticking our nose in other business. We've had this war in the Middle East going on for 20 years. And the rationale is we'd rather fight them over there than over here. Well, guess what? Now we're going to have to fight them over here because you've imported so many. Barack Obama was a traitor. He's a traitor to this country and its Constitution. He imported these people knowing full well what they were going to do. Tampon Tim won't get rid of him out of his own state. It's going on and on and on. California just enacted a rule against that photojournalist, that exposed Minneapolis, and he's exposing California. They passed a law against him. Call me. I'll give you a hand. I'll show you how it's done. And it won't be pretty. And see, that rumor was probably started by the CIA. Their fingerprints are all over it. Let's see. And of course, the good president was overthrown and another dictator was installed. Let's see. Yeah, all over bananas. It kind of surprised me. I think this was Dark Money Matters that I read on Facebook, and I went ahead and Googled it, and oh man, what underlying web of deceit that I found. Unbelievable. And I thought bananas might not be an interesting thing, but I'm going somewhere with this, so hang on to me. Hang on and bear with me. Let's see. Social welfare. Okay. United Fruit Company. United Fruit and labor changes. Yeah. And we go ahead and when we go ahead and we overthrow something, usually somebody worse comes along. I mean, look at what happened with Iran. The ruler of Iran back in the 70s was a pretty Western guy, and he was overthrown by the radical Muslims, and he went ahead and they installed the Shah of Iran. Look at the dictatorship that ensued since 1979. And this goes on and on and on. We always help overthrow it, and we install somebody that we think is better, and it's not. Saddam Hussein was once our friend, all right? He later became our enemy, okay? We went ahead and helped the Afghan rebels against the Soviet Union. They later became our enemy. How many times are you, you don't go ahead and make friends with Muslims, all right? They will stab you in the back. One of the things that we were cautioned by the OSI when I was in the military, don't get into a business deal with Muslims because you will be cheated. They do what they think is right for them at that moment. Situational ethics. All right. They are beholden to none. And yet Donald Trump's going to go ahead and give Saudi Arabia nuclear power. Haven't we learned our lesson? I'm a big fan of Donald Trump. He's doing a lot of good in this country, but I think it needs to be reined in on the international front. We just got out of the World Health Organization. Good for him. He went ahead and he just got us out of NATO. Good for him, or at least that's what I heard, and I looked it up, and that was true. So, but then again, the news could be misleading. We don't know. You don't know. Anyway, go ahead and join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here at JusticeQuestLive.com, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. We go ahead and we present to you the truth as best we can from various sources. So we also present it to you in a way that's scriptural. Yeah. And bear in mind, we are not here to go ahead and amuse the lambs. We are here to go ahead and wake up the lions in this country. Yeah. The true patriots, the ones who are sitting there by the sideline saying, well, my taxes are going, supposedly going for this, Donald Trump went ahead and sometime in the past went ahead and banned Muslims from entering the country anymore. And I thought that's a good idea. Yeah, it's about time. He did it. What happened in that time? The ACL said, no, you can't do it because you're going to go ahead and you're denying them their freedom of religion. No, this isn't freedom of religion. Muslim is their religion. Islam is their legal code. They are sitting here to go ahead and impose Islam on all of us. That means no more bacon, no more beer, no more things we enjoy. All you women are going to have to wear burqas, and if you don't, you're going to be hung. All right? I say we go ahead and we string them up, all of them. We get them out of this country. I'm calling on all American patriots to go ahead and do so. Thank you for joining us today, and I think I've said enough for today, and I think I've made the message abundantly clear. I am sick and tired of the United States citizen becoming a second-class citizen in our own country, while these dirtbags are turning every country that they invaded into a cesspool. Even Sweden. I heard firsthand reports of Sweden. Get them out. End of story. Thank you for joining us today, and enjoy your Wednesday, the rest of the day, and we'll see you on Friday at 11 a.m. Thank you very much. Oh, we got some comments here. Just nuked the whole place. I don't understand that one. Let's see. Just get rid of all government and politicians, we'll be fine. Yeah, there's something to be said for that. Host of the show is bananas. Yeah. COVID was just a test to see how many of the morons of the United States would comply, and it was pretty much most of the country. So we're hosed. Yep, I guess so. That says it all. You know, I went ahead and I documented that the COVID was just a exercise in obedience. Who was going to follow? You know, and on that Christmas Eve, my son and I were down there. We had a whole mall wearing masks. My son and I were the only ones not wearing the masks. And there was pretty much, you know, had to be 2,000 to 3,000 people in the mall. That doesn't bode well for our country. That does not bode well for our country. And I researched the symptoms of COVID myself, and it was a bad cold. Yes, if you had underlying conditions, you had to take precautions. All right, but if you were reasonably healthy, you had nothing to worry about. It was a bad cold. I caught it myself. You know, oh yeah, it was one of the worst colds I ever had. But yeah, I survived. You know, so anyway, there we have it. Thank you to VMAX40 for your comments, and everybody's welcome to leave a comment in the comment section, and I encourage you to do so. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll say happy Wednesday, everybody, and have a good day in the Lord, and we'll go ahead and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.